fellow Kiwanis, and so on. Let me take the opportunity to welcome you all to this our meeting. And I'd like to welcome also our special guest, Dr. Garfield Hunter, an urban planner and sustainability consultant. Tonight he'll be talking to us on urban renewal in times of uncertainty. I'll now go and give all our visiting clubs an opportunity to bring greetings and to introduce their delegations. We'll therefore start with those clubs outside of Jamaica. Clubs outside of Jamaica.
President Paul.
Yes.
Director Roy, and former member of the Kingston Club. I bring you warm greetings from the Kiwanis Club of Toronto Caribbean on behalf of President Sharon. We have 5 members present so far. I wish you a very entertainment and knowledgeable meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome again to our meeting. Any other clubs from outside of Jamaica?
Good evening.
Good.
The name is Dora Henry, President-elect of the Kiwanis Club of Castries in St. Lucia. And my director, Vanessa Henry Long, is also on the call.
Thank you, PE, Dora. Thank you for coming. We certainly welcome you. Any others from outside of Jamaica?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shade Gustav, Secretary Shade Gustav, and I'm from the SJCT Club in St. Lucia. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I am joined by 2 of our club members, and hopefully a few more will be able to join on during the course of this meeting. We're looking forward to what's being presented this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure having you as well, and thank you for coming. Any other from outside of Jamaica?
Good evening. My name is Vanessa Henry Long. I am the PR chairperson and director for the Kiwanis Club of Castries. It's a pleasure being on here, and I'm from St. Lucia.
Oh, thank you for coming. I know you certainly enjoy this meeting. Any other greetings from outside of Jamaica? If not, we'll move to Division 25. Those clubs in Division 25. Division 25. 24, Division 24. Clubs from Division 24. Then we'll move to 23 East. Division 23 East. Remain.
Right, all. PE Roger here, representing Kiwanis Club of Downtown Kingston. I'm not seeing any of my fellow brothers online as yet, but I know they should be on board shortly. We are looking forward to a fantastic presentation. Thanks for the invitation.
And thank you for coming as well.
Thank you.
24, Division 24.
We have 23 East. Kiwanis Club of New Kingston.
Yeah, 23 East. Sorry, 23 East.
President Paul and President-elect Junior.
Good night.
And DP Herman, good night. Kiwanis Club of New Kingston, and we are 5 so far. Hoping
Okay.
others will join us.
Thank you for coming, and we certainly do welcome you. Twenty 23 Central. Clubs from 23 Central.
Pleasant good night to everyone. Kiwanis Erica Dunbar from Club JTS. I'm alone at the moment, looking forward for a great meeting. Thanks for the invitation.
And thanks for coming. You certainly have a great meeting tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good.
Hi, good evening.
Division 23, okay.
Hi, good evening.
How are you tonight?
Very well, thank you. And I am Kiwanian Eurydice, and at the moment I am the only one on the platform, but I'm sure others will be coming pretty soon. And in any event, I'm looking forward to a very informative meeting. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, and thank you for coming as well.
You're welcome.
Good. 23 Central. What about our SLPs?
A pleasant good evening, everyone. This is President Orania from the Dunoon Park Technical High School Key Club. With me, I have FA Aldis Douglas, FA Latoya Duval, and Club Italia, whilst awaiting more members. It is always a pleasure to be here with the KCK family, and we do give thanks for the invitation.
And it is always a pleasure in having you at our meetings as well. Thank you for coming. SLPs?
Hello, good night, everyone. I am President Joshua Brown from the Mike University College Circle K International Club. And here with me is our past distinguished secretary, and we have 2 other members, so we are 4 in total. Looking forward to a wonderful meeting.
And thank you for coming as well. SLPs?
Good evening, everyone. This is President Xavier from the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean. We're currently 7 in number, and we're expecting more members to join, and we're looking forward to a very informative session, and thank you for the invite.
Yes, and thank you for coming, Pres, and your delegation. SLPs? SLPs? What about those non-Kiwanians that are with us tonight? Would they like to bring greetings? Non-Kiwanians? Those who are not Kiwanian yet, but we hope soon will be. Non-Kiwanians? Any other on the platform that would like to bring greetings? You could do so now.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am Prospect Cherise Henry from the Kiwanis Club of North Spanish Town. I am not sure if anyone else is here with me so far. Others are coming. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, good night. This is President Delia from the Kiwanis Club of Castries. Thank you for the invitation. It's a joy being here tonight. I look forward to the presentation, and with me tonight is one of our directors, Vanessa.
Hi. We certainly welcome you and thank you for coming. Any other?
Hello, good night.
Yes.
I am past director Danny Miller from the Kiwani Club of St. Andrew, now an inactive Kiwanian.
Okay. Thank you for coming, and we certainly welcome you with us.
I see Franklin has his hand up, PE Junior from North St. Andrew.
Right. Go ahead, Franklin. Go ahead. If there's no other, then President Paul, I'll turn back proceedings to you.
Okay, thank you very much, PE Junior. Thank you so very much. Well, I have not received any apologies for absence or lateness. Secretary Dion, did you receive any prior to our meeting?
No, President Paul, I didn't receive any.
Okay, then, thank you very much. At this time, we move to the recognition of birthdays and anniversaries, and I'll ask our Vice President Newton. VP Newton, over to you, sir.
Thank you, President Paul. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dr. Hunter. Welcome. Looking forward to hearing you this evening. For our birthdays and anniversaries that we have on our list for this week. First off, there's DP Easton McKinley, who celebrates his birthday on the 27th. Today is the 25th, so the 27th is 2 days' time. And also Audrey, who is the wife of DP Derek Clark, she celebrates her birthday on the 28th. For anniversaries, we have DP Lass Dixon and Sandra, who are celebrating on the 26th, which happens to be tomorrow. And we also have Kiwani and Dennis Townsend and Naslin, who celebrate on the 30th. No, those are what we have on our list for this week. But if there's anyone who has any birthday, anniversary, any special occasion, through President Paul, I would invite you to just let us know about it so we can celebrate with you. Anyone? No one? Okay, well, I see there's 80 of us waiting to hear Dr. Hunter, so let me turn it back to you, President Paul.
Yes, thank you very much, VP Newton. We'll have our Q&A education segment, and I'll ask Secretary DLG Willett to do so before we move to the introduction of our guest speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, President Paul. Good evening again, fellow Kiwanians and guests. Last week was the birthday of Kiwanis International. In fact, we're celebrating our 107th anniversary. We spoke last week on the origin and history of Kiwanis. Tonight, I'm going to just speak briefly on the structure of Kiwanis International, as there are quite a number of new members and a number of SLP members on the platform. Currently, the 80 Kiwanis nations are divided into 5 regions: United States of America, Eastern Canada and the Caribbean District, Europe, Asia Pacific, and Americas. The clear-cut hierarchy of the Kiwanis organization assumes and encourages representation and participation. Kiwanis International is chaired by a president who presides over a House of Delegates, the Kiwanis International Council, and the Kiwanis International Board of Trustees. Just by the way, this year we have a representative on the Board of Trustees, and that is Hope Marks. Below the board are the 5 regions, consisting of 52 districts, each of which is presided over by a governor and a board of trustees. Within each of the 52 districts, there are formally organized divisions, each with its designated lieutenant governor. Within each division lies the heart of Kiwanis, the clubs, each one headed by an annually elected president. President of a Kiwanis Club presides over a board of directors that varies in number, depending on the size of his membership. The president of a large club chairs a board of directors consisting of the immediate past president, president-elect, first and second vice president, treasurer, secretary, some cases assistant secretary, and elected directors. Smaller clubs, some of which have only the required minimum of 20 members, operate with a smaller board of directors. Each club is managed by a board of directors. However, implementation of board policies is carried out through 8 standing committees and ad hoc committees specially appointed by the president. Each member of the club is required to serve on at least one of these committees: fundraising, youth services, service leadership, community services, human and spiritual values, inter-club and fellowship, club meetings, and membership growth. The appointment of committee chairman is a prerogative of the president. Each committee in turn appoints a secretary. It is the responsibility of the committee to conceptualize and formulate plan of activities within the club's policy framework and to carry them out following approval of the board of directors. Although Kiwanis clubs enjoy some autonomy from Kiwanis International, that autonomy has to be exercised according to the general principles and visions of the international body. At one level, local clubs identify and determine the programs that they wish to implement for the development of their communities. At another level, Kiwanis International can commit Kiwanis Worldwide to specific programs broadly defined as catering to the welfare of mankind in general and children in particular. Interaction between international body and clubs worldwide is facilitated by an annual convention. The latter convention is representative in that each club can send 2 delegates who are entitled to vote on amendments to bylaws and the election of international officers and other matters brought before the House of Delegates. Fellow Kiwanians, particularly our new members, I trust you found that Kiwanis education, you've learned something this evening. Over to you, President Paul.
Yes, thank you very much, Secretary DLG Willie. But before we move on to the introduction for our guest speaker, I want to welcome our Lieutenant Governor Rosie, Lieutenant Governor for Division 23 Central. It's always good to have you with us, LG. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Paul. Always good to be here.
Yes, thank you. At this time, we'll move to our introduction of our guest speaker, and I'll ask Kiwanian Andre Palmer to do so.
Thank you, President Paul, and good evening, fellow Kiwanians. I take great pleasure to introduce Dr. Garfield Hunter. He is an eminently qualified professional in the field. And Dr. Hunter, let me just say before I start, do forgive me if I don't do justice to all of your qualifications and accomplishments. It's a well-decorated profile. So Dr. Garfield Hunter is an urban planner with over 13 years of diverse knowledge and leadership experience in urban redevelopment planning, urban climate change planning, housing and social equity, and sustainable education. He has led the development and implementation of strategic research, policy programs, and projects geared towards improving the lives of marginalized and equity-seeking communities. Dr. Hunter is skilled at navigating complex institutional environments while working with and consulting for international development agencies, such as the Global Environment Facility and European Union's Erasmus Mundus program, government agencies in Jamaica, such as the Airport Authority of Jamaica, Urban Development Corporation, Jamaica Railway Corporation, and the National Environment and Planning Agency. He has also worked with multicultural nonprofit organizations in Canada, the European Research Institute in Italy, and private sector companies in Jamaica, such as FESCO. Guided by his career mantra, collaborate to innovate, he is keen on participatory knowledge mobilization, driven by his unique value proposition to utilize plain language communication to engage with diverse and complex stakeholders and decision makers. With this in mind, he founded Equity Urbanism in 2019 to start designing, planning, and leading public participation and engagement sessions with various stakeholders to ensure their inclusion in the decision-making process. Specifically, he recently spearheaded co-creation projects for the Diverse City Community Resource Society, Province of British Columbia, Anti-Racism Data Legislation, City of Vancouver Renter Office, Renter Service Center, City of Toronto, which was the Mobilizing Justice Project, and Community Foundation of Canada, Equitable Infrastructure Project. He was recently appointed the Director of Education and Engagement at the Cooperative Housing Federation and of British Columbia is an adjunct lecturer at the University of Technology in Jamaica. He holds a Bachelor of Sciences in degree in Urban and Regional Planning from the University of Technology and a PhD in Urban Planning and Public Policy from Tongji University in Shanghai between 2015 and 2017. He was a research fellow at the European Research Academy of Bolzano in Italy, where he was exploring EU smart energy city and community projects. In his spare time, he rides his electric scooter, touring urban neighborhoods in Metro Vancouver and attends international track and field events. He is a novice investor on the Jamaica stock market. It gives me great pleasure for the Kiwanians to hand you over to Dr. Hunter.
Good, good evening. This afternoon here in Vancouver. I am Garfield Hunter. You can drop the doctor for now. It's okay. My presentation today is on, sorry, let me fix this. Urban renewal in times of uncertainty, rethinking urban planning in a post-COVID world. And I'm happy that President Paul Peart has invited me. And there's noise in somebody's background. Oh, thanks.
Let me see if I can mute.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask everyone to mute. Is there her microphone?
Yeah, it's muted now.
Okay.
Thank you to President Peart for inviting me to give a talk on urban renewal. When I was asked, I was not sure in terms of what the topic would be, but I ended up with urban renewal in times of uncertainty, given that as an urban planner and basically in Jamaica, where my presentation will mainly be focused on we're now transitioning from different agencies managing urban planning portfolio to urban renewal and housing being under one umbrella, which is, I think, one of the first time this has happened. I'll go quickly. The disclaimer is the views expressed in my presentation, it's purely my own and doesn't reflect the values and views of any organization that I associate with or any other urban planners in Jamaica. So my central question is COVID-19 pushing urban planners to think aloud about redesigning more resilient cities? And anybody can answer this question just blindly, just based on your observation.
Yes. Yes, I can.
Please just go ahead. Let me hear your views.
I have been listening to a number of commentary and so forth. And one thing they have been focusing on, or COVID has brought to the attention of the planners, is that many of the homes or buildings are built in the United States. It doesn't have enough ventilation. So COVID was the buildings that are built with lower ceilings was able to, or COVID circulated more prevalently in those buildings. And you might observe that those are sometimes your hospitals or some of the homes or so forth. So the older homes with the higher ceilings tend to have had less COVID exposure, or COVID never lingered around, the virus never lingered too much in the environment, or those people never felt the full onslaught of COVID. So things like those, COVID is helping people to plan, or you planners to plan differently how you design buildings. And I'm sure that would extrapolate into building communities, how you design communities.
Thank you. And just clarification, urban planners don't really design buildings, architects design buildings, but we are always collaborating in terms of how to improve the passive design and ventilation of buildings as well.
Correct.
So that is a great point. The outline of my presentation, I'll just talk about a background on urban renewal paradox in Jamaica at the moment, an introduction to urban renewal past to present, and I label that as the messy situation, and the question of uncertainty and it speaks to wicked and super wicked problems that have confronted us as we go about our daily activities. So outside of COVID, there are several other wicked and super wicked problems that we're faced in society today. Then also in terms of changing the script. So many cities or urban areas, especially Jamaica, the Caribbean, globally, are at a stage of stagnation. And those cities, should they choose rejuvenation or they're choosing decline? So that is where a lot of cities are at the moment as well, even being confronted with COVID. And then we'll have some question and answer and closing. Back in, if many people can remember, back in after the general election in Jamaica in 2020, the Andrew Holness administration, he named a new Ministry of Housing, Urban Renewal, Climate Change, and Environment. After this, I was invited to being part of a consultation, a stakeholder consultation, to determine what urban renewal will look like in Jamaica, what it should be, what it should look like. Why should we go towards urban renewal? How should it be done in terms of implementation? What are the stakeholders? What temporal variation in terms of time and the spatial context? And just by answering a few of those questions here in this presentation as well, this is how we'll proceed. Critical to note is that when I say urban renewal as well, it triggers a lot of folks because it spells, or in terms of it signifies gentrification. And that was one of the big discussion coming out of that meeting as well. What is happening now with that ministry? It has shifted from a central ministry, it's gone back to the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. That ministry now has gone through in terms of human resource staffing, and that I think is still ongoing. They just hired a senior director for that division recently. What I found though, based on my readings and observation of activities, even budget presentations from minister, there's dispersed priorities and marginalization of urban planning, so to speak, given that climate change and environment were, and housing as well, were given more priority as it relates to projects. Maybe keenly because those portfolios were already developed, but urban renewal was left lagging, and it's still lagging up to today. So recently, the Inter-American Development Bank, they put out a call to fund the National Urban Renewal Policy and Action Plan for Jamaica. I know the person who was awarded that contract, won't name that person right now. We're in talks as well in terms of direction. And another thing that I would say that causes that paradox now with urban renewal is the short-termism of urban renewal in Jamaica. I use the word projectization because a lot of international development organizations or international agencies, they will fund short-term projects, which maybe have a lifespan of 2 years or 3 years. And after that funding cycle is over, then the money is finished. So they go on to other stuff. So it is left up to local authority or local institutions to carry on that project. But without that sustaining financing, normally what happens is that the project normally fails, or it gets finished without fully achieving the objectives. So that leads me to the issue of definition of urban renewal versus sustainable urban renewal. Some colleagues and I have been in discussion as to how should we go about, because we're looking at a definition of what urban renewal is in Jamaica. And should we take the approach of a sustainable urban renewal where it doesn't really speak to gentrification, but it speaks to integrating what exists in there and build that up? Because what happens is that when gentrification happens, people's total livelihood and quality of life is disrupted. Only in countries such as Shanghai, or well, cities such as Shanghai, where the government, because of their de-densification policies, they build like new towns surrounding those cities. And in building these new towns, so like Shanghai, because of they found that the population in the core was over their projected limit, what they built were 9 new towns around the city itself, and connect those new towns with subway transportation. So persons didn't feel in terms of they were not a part of the urban core. So that increases accessibility as well. So why is there a need for urban renewal in Jamaica? And I think because we have the reactory approach to planning in the past, and we all know in terms of squatting is a incredulous problem currently in the country. Climate change and hazard risk. If you just by checking and seeing Tonga situation recently, and the degradation of even the Elsha coastline, which has disrupted livelihood for fisher folks there, we realize that sea level rise and different climate change risks, it's causing havoc in terms of our development trajectory. And currently, I feel that there's a major imbalance between urban and regional growth. So priority is always going to be given to urban area because that's where most of the population is, that's where most of the economic activities are. And regional development, people is going to continuously move from rural to urban area, which is going to create an imbalance if you don't create those kind of opportunities in rural areas. That kind of imbalance will continue to persist. When folks in Jamaica, or well, I'm using Jamaica's context, speaks to urban development order versus local sustainable development plans, I will just explain this briefly. We always hear that NEPA is doing a redevelopment, a development order, and development orders are like legal document or legal instrument under the Town and Country Planning Act. And with a development order, it's guides development or restricts development, so to speak. So it's a development control mechanism. So for example, if you're building an apartment on Ruthven Road and it has to follow guidelines that have been set out in the development order. Whereas the local sustainable development plan, that is being done by local authorities or municipal corporations in Jamaica. And it was recently has a binding, it was recently became binding under the amendment to the Municipal Act. And however, the authorities or the municipal authorities, they don't have to implement any strategies. Only thing the act says is that you should develop these plans. So there's no binding for sustainable growth then from that perspective. What happened is that you now have 2 different sets of a development or the development plans, but they're at different levels of government. So which is development orders from central government agencies, NEPA, and the local sustainable development plan through the municipal corporation. Municipal corporation are still managers of cities to which they have jurisdictional responsibilities. So there's a lot of imbalances there. when I speak to the other aspect is marginalization of urban and regional planning in Jamaica, I speak to the political and economic perspective. And it gets very tricky here. Successive administrations, what they have done is they have engaged in short-termism, which is, I think, is a bane of sustainability. Whereas most of these projects, urban renewal projects in the past, present, they follow electoral life cycle. And when following this electoral life cycle, it's normally within a 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 year period. Whereas if you're doing genuine and comprehensive urban renewal project, it has to be long-term. It has to be more than 5 years to 10 years because it has to be sustaining. And this is a major problem. So a minister will tell the planner or whatever to develop short project because you need to show quick wins to the electorate so that you can show that in your manifestos, right? So this is the general trend. If you have ever studied or looked at China, India, former USSR, which has China and India has borrowed the former USSR model of planning and urban renewal, where they normally follow a 5-year cycle. And with that, priority is given, say, for example, to education sector, where they will fully develop education sector, fully develop the health sector. So they do it by sector-wise. And after 5 years, it's expected that that sector should be fully developed and modernized. Not to say other sectors won't be prioritized or funded, but the priority over the next 5 years would be education, health, transportation, etc. And then you would expect that these sectors should be fully working over the next 5 years, whereas in what is happening now, it's very messy. You do not see these kinds of long-term growth. Sometimes you'll have plans being done and they are not really implemented because it's dependent on the government of the day as well, and their own desire. Also, there's overlap in terms of institutional capacity, and this was documented as way back as 1984 through EAP report, where he mentioned imbalance in terms of growth with in terms of institutional capacity. There's too many planning agencies operating, UDC, NHT, NEPA. There are a lot of them. Some of them has been decommissioned or have been closed or amalgamated, but you have different agencies doing more than one function. Then also, and this is where I'll mention as well, is that there's been a cessation of professional and technical decision-making voice. And what happens is that in Jamaica, urban planners are mainly working for government, so they have no voice. And what is taking place is that because they have no external voice, even the members who are in Jamaica Institute of Planners, they work for government as well, so they can't really speak out about certain things because the government is their employer. So what happened is there's not much uproar. Say, for example, the architects, engineers, if there's issues and problems, they are on it because most of their members are in the private sector. Say, for example, the city of Vancouver, they have established a planning commission, which is an independent body which guides the government and will tell the government they're doing bullshit. So I would, in terms of want to see this kind of commission going forward. So it consists of technocrats and from different professions in the built environment. So quickly go over the this slide that speaks to, there have been many urban renewal initiatives in Jamaica, and these initiatives first kickstarted with, in terms of the Urban Development Corporation, which was incorporated under the same act in 1968. And the UDC has broad powers under its designated areas such as Kingston, Ocho Rios, Montego Bay, Falmouth, and Cayman as a state. And it has become, today a new general manager was named as well. I worked at the UDC for 2 years. I don't really have much to say. They have done a lot of work in terms of developing a lot of areas, but because of the infestation, I would use that word, of government actions, a lot of the work has been diverted to new projects because you get a new funding. So say, for example, recently, international agency was funding project in Port Royal, and all of the energy from other projects such as downtown Kingston redevelopment was diverted towards that. So this kind of activities take place. So there needs for some kind of in terms of repurposing of the organization itself. A lot of these agencies, these programs, from Operation Pride to the Community Renewal Program, they basically fail because the government and different implementing agencies, they were short term again, lack of proper engagement. I use the word corruption because that is very prominent, and also because government has diverted funds from these programs. And this brings me to the issue of uncertainty in planning, and it's in terms of each city is trying hard as its best to cope with the COVID-19 implications. The urban buzz is paused in many cities, reducing economic productivity, sociability, and mobility. The pandemic has definitely exposed the vulnerability of cities and the readiness and preparedness of each city in dealing with the pressures of healthcare, the economy, climate is loud, and that is an everyday headline now. From the beginning, scientists and scholars have been continuously trying to assess the virus, its impact. Sorry. So the pandemic has basically disrupted our entire lives, so to speak. Besides the pandemic now, there are other related uncertainties such as climate change and disaster risk, which scholars in Australia have labeled climate change as a super wicked problem because there are many different issues and challenges, cause, effect, factors, and even climate change because of, as the person who answered me mentioned, because of that as well, many cities are starting to look at what climate change cities will look at in terms of post-COVID as well, whereas they're designing more open space, using more tactical urbanism, which is where you can't eat at restaurants most times. So they have seating areas outside where on a Saturday or a Sunday, I've observed it in Vancouver, in different cities in Kelowna as well, where the streets are blocked off and restaurants are allowed to put seats and eating areas outside in streets. So this is in terms of repurposing streetways, so it becomes more walkable as well. The housing crisis in Jamaica, that's another, I would say, an uncertainty as well. What is happening though, and I maybe persons who are international as well, anybody in Canada, they can mention in terms of their, for me, I prefer to rent than own a home. And if you look, for me, I look on the long-term statistics or calculation of it. I'll pay less renting a home throughout my lifetime than I pay on a mortgage and maintenance and operation of that property. So I look on that from a life cycle perspective. That's my own perspective. However, well, what I don't see a lot is rental housing being done in Jamaica as well. And in terms of tapping into the rental market, because I remember when I used to, if I'm looking for an apartment on a Sunday, I would have to get up 5 o'clock, get the cleaner from the street or wherever, from the store, the supermarket or gas station or wherever it's open. And I have to start calling people from 6 o'clock, annoying people. And that is that's not progressive. So what would be progressive is have youth housing, have housing for the elderly, have housing for, in terms of affordable housing for students transitioning from university as well. So you can have, doesn't have to be extremely high density, you can have medium density as well, which is acceptable. And a bachelor studio, 1-bedroom apartment, 2-bedroom apartment, mix that kind of thing. And also provide in terms of apartments for students, young professionals who are graduating from university, want to rent, and maybe down the line, they can save enough money and transition into purchasing their own apartment, so to speak. So that sort of thing is important. Crime is another beast, another bigger animal, which is outside of my jurisdiction. But planners have tried to attempt to solve the issue of crime. And we far back in terms of they've used global positioning system. I know geoinformatics are they have been working with the Jamaican Conservatory Force to establish like hot zones and stuff like this, but it needs to move beyond that as well. Whereas in urban planning and design, there is a principle called crime prevention through environmental design, which I've not seen really adopted or has been used in any other planning in Jamaica thus far. So I'm going to share this link with you and you can read it when you have time. Sorry, I'm going to pop this into the chat, President period. So this is an article on El Salvador, where the mayor used style of urban renewal, which was gentrification, to solve really or reduce their crime problems. And in Jamaica, we have used similar principles such as CPS, Citizen Security and Justice Program, which was funded by international organization. Maybe I think it's the EU. Not sure if it's a EU, but I know it was funded by international agency. And every 4 years, when the program is supposed to be finishing, there was uncertainty about funding. But I know that they have worked in a lot of different communities in Rockfort, in communities in St. James, and they were a genuine transformation because they tried to provide opportunities for youth through scholarships and training programs as well. And this really worked. But because of, again, the sustainability of funds, this really didn't take off. Another thing is the fourth industrial revolution, and we're seeing that in terms of through the use of information communication technology. And we have seen during COVID the quite imbalance between what is taking place in terms of between rich and poor and persons who can easily afford computer versus those who can't. then the coverage of Wi-Fi and internet services and these kind of stuff between urban and rural area, it's something that is in terms of very tricky. So what is going to happen is that urban areas, even though I know Jamaicans, I see on Twitter people talk shit, sorry, people talk smack about sorry, telecommunication companies and the lack of coverage in urban area as well. So what do you think about rural area? So in terms of changing the script, I just wanted to briefly focus on in terms of how do you plan for uncertainty? And what is happening now is that a lot of different organizations, countries, companies as well have pushed folks to move towards remote working and learning. So using a hybrid model. So you work 2 days in office, 3 days at home, and that sort of thing. I know in the public sector in Jamaica, it's fully gone back to, well, there have been people have been told, public sector employees have been told to go back fully, but I've not really seen any studies in Jamaica on remote working to really, and learning to really inform what, just in terms of the decision making of government as per that. One of the sense that I get why government doesn't really want to go back to like a hybrid model or that sort of thing is because you're gonna have where persons who might work from home, sometimes they might take JUTC buses as well. And that is gonna reduce, remove revenue from JUTC. Also, what is happening as well is that in the informal sector, such as corner shops, cook shops, all of these other sector who depends on workers going into work, so to speak. Because if you're at home, you're gonna reduce, I'm sure folks can tell you, and I have reduced my spending a lot because I was working from home and wasn't going on the road. Because every time you go on the road, I'm sure you're gonna break so $1,000 Jamaican dollars or 2,000 or whatever it is. You're gonna spend some money, so you really save a bit more. So well, some people, maybe those without kids, but the hybrid model is what a lot of organizations are moving back to, moving towards at the moment. Then you have what's happening in a lot of cities. You have, because of this flexible work schedule, you have the development of, well, there's a trend to moving back towards suburban revival in terms of people moving back to the rural area, so to speak, because if you have to come to work for maybe 2 days a week, that's okay. You can drive in to Kingston or from Manchester for those 2 days. Whereas in Vancouver, we have observed it where a lot of people are giving up their apartment downtown and they're moving to the suburbs because they can work fully from home. And that is really challenging a lot of rental, causing a lot of issue in terms of rental and vacant apartments in these cities. So landlords who used to depend on this income to pay their mortgage, they can no longer afford to do that. So that's going to have the triple effect of people in terms of going into this foreclosure and that sort of thing. So another issue as it relates to changing the script as well, we see the trend in terms of with social behavior and we have to plan for this as well, where it's emerging in terms of how we work and how we live, and results sometimes in mental health and loneliness. We see loneliness also increasing, while at the same time we're also connected with each other more impersonally. I think in terms of through online media forums and stuff like that. So that kind of interaction might change as well. But persons are yearning for that kind of social connectivity still, which has resulted in us going back into lockdowns after lockdowns as well. The whole issue of smart city that results from ICT as it connects to infrastructure services, where now you see tax offices and different offices you can pay online fees and stuff like that. So that trend is also developing, as well as e-commerce. So you'll have more logistics developing as well. So this brings into focus, are we gonna see a decline in shopping malls as well? So these are questions that we're asking ourselves. Are we gonna see in terms of our shopping malls still relevant, given that there's an increase in e-commerce? I'm not sure what the trend is in Jamaica. I know a lot of Jamaicans shop on Amazon and stuff, but are we going to this trend, or after COVID, everything is going to be business as usual? Another one that I've seen in cities is in terms of, and I had it here, but it was removed, virtual mobility, in terms of a lot of international conferences that I would attend. Conferences, you have art galleries and museums, they're offering their services online as well. So not sure what will happen if we are going to go back to normal soon. A lot of questions are surrounding this. And then the last one, which is my baby, so to speak, which I have used to integrate everything. Anything I'm analyzing or observing, I always look at it through an equity lens, which is, and I'll just define these words: recognitional equity. Are we planning for low income, marginalized community or persons with disability? Are we planning for women and children as well, the elderly? So this is where recognitional equity comes in. Distributive equity now is where you're planning for all. Everybody can access these services as well. And then procedural equity, which speaks to participation and inclusion of folks into the decision making. Because I'm sure if President Peart, they're planning, the government is doing a redevelopment or urban renewal project or whatever in your community, you'd want to be consulted. And this is where it becomes critical, where people's views and are shared. And I can remember, I'll just give you a quick, I know my time is running out, but I'll give you a quick, the story of a professor from UA when he was teaching us community development. And he said that he was doing one of these urban renewal projects. He was doing they were doing an intervention there. And one of the area, they were trying to build up the infrastructure a little bit. Persons didn't really want stuff in there. They couldn't run like different infrastructure, water, sewage, etc., into the houses because they were planning on doing redevelopment. And what happened is that they were building like communal facilities, like bathrooms, like in the yard, so to speak, if persons are aware of like a tenement yard. So you have like a central bathroom and standpipe and stuff like that. And they were building the bathroom, they were putting on doors because, people want their privacy and stuff. So they thought that the people wanted all of this and stuff like that. And anyway, when they went back again and the doors came off the bathroom, so they're wondering, how is it that the people took out the door of the bathroom? And so they put on a new bathroom, went back again, bathroom is gone. Apparently, girls or females in the bathroom were being sexually abused in the bathroom, but nobody really stopped to ask these kinds of fundamental questions. What do you really want, and what is the design component? So this brings to the for the issue of co-creation. So when we're designing cities and urban areas, we have to use co-creation and get people's input and genuine input. Not talking about placation and that sort of thing. Get people's genuine input and involvement into the project. And this is one of the reasons why the local sustainable development plan that was done for Kingston in 2005, it failed, because at the end of the process, they realized that there was no public consultation done. And this really was bad business. So the plan was rejected. Another trend that in terms of from an urban planning perspective as well, I would want to say we have so many dilapidated cities and towns in Jamaica, and there's no plan for rejuvenation of these cities. There's no life. After 5, Black River is closed down totally, becomes totally dark and isolated. There's nobody there. Whereas in terms of Santa Cruz might be bustle. There's a lot of buzz in Santa Cruz. So there's imbalance, but still these areas tend to be unplanned and it's very cumbersome, a lot of traffic. So how can we rejuvenate these areas? And simple being, is it through urban renewal, through gentrification, or removing some of these cumbersome land use in these areas? Also, what is taking place as well is the active transport. We're cycling. I know people always talk about this in terms of the culture of Jamaicans. My work is like 6 kilometers or 5 to 6 kilometers away from my apartment. And I bought a scooter and invested in a scooter, and I scooter to work every day on this. If there's no snow or excessive rain, I scooter to work every day and go home and recharge and come back again the next day. So I don't have a problem with that. So also in terms of active transport, cycling, walking, can Jamaica move towards this? Sure it can, but then there's the culture of, we always talk about the taxi man and their unruly behavior, robbery in terms of people walking or cycling on the street as well. So everything plays, this is why urban renewal becomes, I think, some sort of a super wicked problem to really address. And the last thing I'll just mention on this slide is infill development. And what infill development is, we always say that we know there's not enough, there's not infinite of land in urban areas, in different cities, in Kingston, Montego Bay, Falmouth, Ocho Rios, wherever we are at. But there are abandoned buildings, open spaces that are not used, or there are, well, not open space, but abandoned buildings, buildings that are under construction and have been aborted, or there are many different types of uses in Kingston, or building or spaces that can be adapted or repurposed and used for housing or urban development as well. So this brings me to this slide. I'll just quickly mention some uses in adaptive reuse in Australia, Canada, Canada, Spain, Sweden, UK, US. The convention centers, hotels, sports facilities, dormitories have been converted to temporary medical facilities to shelter and shelters for homeless. What you find now as well in Canada as well, homeless population has increased. So as the number of shelters, and shelters, they will get funded from municipal government. I think in Jamaica, we don't really plan for the homeless population readily. Rebuilding plans. So Paris has planned a 5-minute city underpinned a sufficient accommodation, self-sufficient communities where 15 minutes cities where you can move from one place in the city to a next place in 15 minutes. I know, say for example, while studying in Shanghai, Shanghai has a 5-minute city plan, and they started that back in the Expo, the Shanghai Expo in 2010. And what they did was, in terms of with this five city plan, they plan to expand the subway system in Shanghai, where Shanghai now has the densest subway system globally, where if you live, people should live between 5 to 8 minutes walk or cycle to a subway station. And this, they have made like a bold plan. One of the questions, because I'm on subways and trains and trams, one of the questions I'm going to ask later on, and maybe the panel can, or persons can ask or discuss it, if you think Kingston metropolitan region, which is Kingston, St. Catherine, I'll put Clarendon or Spanish Town in that, Portmore, do you think there's a need for a tram system or a light rail system in the Kingston metropolitan region? And how can this be sustained given the failures of Jamaica Urban Transit Company? In Amsterdam, they're using a donut model to seek what is needed by people to thrive without harming the economy. South Korea and China as well, they have developed a tracing app which helps South Koreans track many cases indicating digital technology integration and resilience. That has been military style in China, where persons have to show if a police, etc., the color of their apps, and they're tracked based on if they come in contact with persons who have been exposed or in neighborhoods, so you cannot travel outside of that neighborhood. I already mentioned in the US and in Canada, people moving back to suburbs, and also redesigning street parking lots being used by restaurants to ease virus restrictions. I mentioned that, and that is called tactical urbanism. And in New Zealand, they're funding pop-up bike lanes and widening sidewalk. So most of this I've already said, so I won't really go over it. But I think an integrated model for urban renewal post-COVID, and in terms of, you have to have a lead coordinating agency, and I think the government of Jamaica has done that in terms of the ministry, but there are still several agencies who have responsibility for urban renewal. Using co-creation through engagement of stakeholders, and also adopting a PPP, private-public partnership, public-private partnership model as well. A lot of countries, and I know, are using crowdfunding as well to galvanize funding for different projects. So this is where the government has to also look at how you can leverage private sector investment as well to fund. I'm sure if similar to Wigton Wind Farm, if the project makes sense and there's a good return on investment, I'm sure it can go to a public offering as well. Integrate transformation or built and social environment. So you cannot divorce the built, the social and the environmental context. It has to be in unison. And that is in terms of, I think, through the SDGs. I didn't mention it in this presentation because I think the government has aligned Vision 2030 to, or the SDGs to Vision 2030. That is a whole lecture on itself and talk on its own. And in terms of how the government is doing as it relates to the SDGs and Vision 2030 itself. Funding, government, private, international partners. However, if they go international partners, there should be some kind of commitment where the project has continuity. My problem is that sometimes, and if I normally follow the EU model, where the EU fund projects in Europe, where what happens is that there are two factors that EU uses as well when they're funding projects. Well, evaluator criteria. Are these projects scalable? Can it be scaled up? So if you build passive building downtown Kingston? Can you take that building and build it with the same business model in Ocherius or in Montego Bay or in Falmouth or wherever it is? So it has to be scalable and replicable. So you scale it up within the city, whereas also you can replicate it in another city as well. So you have to use that kind of business model approach. Then monitoring and evaluation, nothing can be done without that in terms of to measure the progress. Legislation through tax incentive. Jamaica currently has an urban renewal tax. It has been used downtown Kingston and also along Spanish Town Road, free zone area. So that's where urban renewal tax has been used as well. There's a need for, we always say there's a problem between National Water Commission and Works Agency. So that kind of vertical and horizontal coordination and implementation of project has to be synergized. And I already mentioned in terms of long-term planning, and that is key for me in terms of you can't just have short-term projects. You have to do long-term planning, then you have short-term, medium-term, long-term projects emanating from this kind of long-term planning. We have a lot of plans in Jamaica, never get implemented. So that is in terms of, we have to change that kind of focus and thinking as well. So there ends my presentation. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions or thoughts or comments, we can start sharing them. Sorry, President Pierre, for going over time.
Oh, no, thank you very much, Dr. Hunter. But before I move to the question and answer segment, I'm going to ask for a motion of extension of 10 minutes so we can complete our program for the evening. Members of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston?
So moved. So moved. All right,
10 minutes, not enough, but go on.
Okay, those in favor, okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
I see one question in the chat, Dr. Hunter, from our director, Warren McDonald. He asked a question, what in your view are the main reasons for the slow development of downtown Kingston, and what in your view can be done to speed up the process and make it more sustainable?
The plan, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the downtown Kingston plan, and UDC had completed that plan because when I was working at UDC in 2013, I worked at UDC from 2011 to 2013, and they had spearheaded 5 redevelopment plans. Downtown Kingston was one. I wrote the Ocherius plan. I know my colleague, she was sitting beside me writing the Downtown Kingston plan. They had different funding options. We looked at funding models because I was the one who looked at funding models for Ocherius and see what, how can we fund the plan itself. And financing is one of the main reasons because I think like for Ocherius, we use it, we went to TEF fund, and because TEF in terms of use fund tourism related activities. I'm not sure, and I cannot say, but Downtown Kingston doesn't have the tourism pool thus far. They have tried to integrate a lot of tourism related activities, so that's festival, market, and that sort of thing in the plan. So that is a big issue. Another is willpower in terms of the government. You have this beautiful plan that has been done. You have several stakeholders that want to get it, to see that progress. But I think most of the projects were long-term projects, and it doesn't fit within that electoral life cycle, and maybe they get shelved. Mixed priority as well. I know urban planners working at UDC and architects, they were moving towards implementation and getting project managers on these plans as well. So they created a project management unit, and priorities were sidetracked to Port Royal because they were bringing in cruise ship. I'm not sure what the new GM and the new board and what directives they will take, but it's quite in terms of multiple factors, and speeding up in terms of it just requires the willpower of the public and private sector. You see the Grace Kennedy move back downtown. We really need some of that kind of energy back into downtown, whereas as 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock come, it's really dead. So you have to put in like some kind of mixed use, where in a lot of cities you see where you have commercial activities on the ground floor, where on the upper floors you have apartment buildings. So this kind of mixed use development kind of bring that lively and vibrance to downtown areas. And downtown Kingston is maybe one of the only downtown in a city that I've been to that is not energized and buzzing like after 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. It's just commercial uses mainly.
Okay, thank you very much. There's another question, and I'll take 2 more from the participants. Dr. Bailey's asking specifically, what are the major uncertainties that are derailing urban renewal?
Dr. Bailey, I mentioned that already. And I must say, President Peart, I want to open the floor to Dr. Bailey for him to answer his own question. He is my professor advisor from the University of Technology. My mentor, look up to him immensely. So if so, then you can we open the floor for Dr. Bailey to speak for a few minutes as well.
He's going to test you. He's testing you.
Dr. Bailey.
Bailey.
I'm sure you didn't come to talk, but I'm opening the floor for you.
No, I really didn't. I came to listen and learn.
You're being modest, sir.
I came to listen and learn. One of the things I think that we are being constrained by is the fact that historically, Kingston is still perceived as a residential space. It is unfortunate that Jamaicans see an urban space as predominantly residential, when in fact, all the laws and principles of urbanization dictates that an urban space is basically a dominantly commercial space, and therefore, what semblance of residential development exists in Kingston is at the mercy of commercial development. That being said, it means that we have a lot of historical retention, where we now see a trend towards high-rise, multifamily, high-density developments. That has been well, many communities have been affected by these, and they are at war basically with the approving agencies, NEPA, KCMC, NW, and other agencies that approve these developments. But the fact is that urbanization, contemporary trends, is a movement of commercialization. And we cannot afford to have persons, and I know this is a very contradictory statement, persons who want to live a rural lifestyle, who want to live on rural spaces within a predominantly urban commercial space. Those luxuries cannot be afforded to Kingston anymore. We are way past that in terms of urbanization at the global level. Cities are the center of commerce, finance, and all those things. As a matter of fact, even the concept of uptown, downtown, which is still socially biased to define. Downtown is supposed to be the center for administration, uptown is the center for commercial activities. So we're still way behind the mark in trying to create and define Kingston as a proper urban space. And persons who want to maintain those historical traditions of how the space is used from way back in the 18th, 16th, and 17th centuries, they are going to have to just get out of the way, because this is not where the trend is going globally. You can't afford to be living on 40 acres of land in Kingston with one house on it. That's the urban lifestyle. It's an urban lifestyle. So we have to now decide what kind of urban center we want to create. And I think NEPA and other agencies are falling behind in leading the charge properly. The trend is forceful, and there are going to be a lot of tiers and court cases and all kind of different disturbance of people's spatial luxuries now and in the going future. These uncertainties are now in our faces, and we have to decide strongly what kind of urban center we want to create. It's as simple as that.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bailey, for that, for sharing your thoughts. I'll do one more question so we can move on with the vote of thanks. I see DP Stewart raise a question in the chat. He asks Dr. Hunter on his expertise, if his expertise could be applied to the current dispute with the mine in the cockpit country.
Can I say no comment? I'll say no comment on that one, actually. It's a bit politically heavy for me. I'll just say no comment. I don't want to, what I say, I have my own personal views, but I'll just abstain from commenting on that question. Sorry, Stuart.
But you said you were speaking on your own views.
Yeah, but
representing anybody.
But still,
okay, all right.
It's a contentious issue. It's a very contentious issue.
Through you, Mr. President, I had made a comment in the chat, which aligns with what our guest speaker is saying. I think the leaders in the agencies, things don't have any teeth. All the planning is going along, but they don't have any teeth, no enforcement. And I get the impression that they work to keep their jobs. And you did say that you need somebody, you didn't use the words, but with the gumption, I would prefer another word, to push forward to tell government this is nonsense and this is what should happen. But planners' files always go to file 13.
Agreed.
File 13 is the biggest file.
Agreed.
So don't you think they are relatively unexposed? They haven't traveled, or they don't have the international flavor to drive things, and yet they are employed to do this. Kingston Harbor should be like Sydney Harbor.
That's right. Your waterfront should be your highest price with your highest price properties, real estate.
Only in Jamaica.
Yeah. Okay. I see one more question. I see a hand raised in the chat. I mean, a participant. Oh, Dr. Bailey. I'll yield to you, sir. Then I will wrap up with the vote of thanks by Kiwan and Marlon.
I want to be quiet, but I've been drawn out.
You need to be early. You need to be a guest speaker.
When we use the word planning, I think we don't understand what we planning is about how we distribute resources. And the two main are land and people. Now, I think we need to differentiate between physical planning and spatial planning. What we have in Jamaica and Kingston is physical planning, where we decide what are the physical structures that we need to put on the land, right? spatial planning ensures that those structures function as a system. We don't have that. We just put things haphazardly without them tying together. For example, it is sad that we have somebody can drive from Ligani or from Hope Passes in a 7-seater to work in New Kingston. That is poor planning. That should not be Jamaica's reality in Kingston. You can't believe in Hope Passes going to New Kingston in a 7-seater all by yourself. When we did some research with NEPA a couple years ago, Kingston can be rezoned properly to house 6 million inhabitants easily. There's no going around that. The figures are there to prove that. But it would mean that we have a lot more change in our social system.
Exactly.
Less vehicular traffic. You cannot go to Paris and say somebody in Paris driving a 7-seater SUV, or in London. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So when we say 6 million inhabitants, it has to be 6 million inhabitants with a total change in the social spatial connection between the people and the spaces. So I think we need to decide, are we going to take big steps, as the Chinese do? The Chinese take very big steps in planning, or are we going to take these baby steps that have not gotten us anywhere? Regarding my take on the cockpit mining, I think mining should go ahead, right? But it has to be properly regulated. Persons think that once the minister override NEPA's decision, right, then NEPA is left out of the picture. That is when NEPA must significantly upgrade its monitoring mechanisms to ensure that the mining is done properly. And I think we fail to recognize that NEPA has a lot of work to do when it has been overruled by the minister. And that is where NEPA needs to push to improve its monitoring mechanism to ensure that the mine, when done, the resources are stored and brought back in after mine has ceased. But it has to be done properly. But I hope we can do this. We can go off hours talking about this. I will stop here now.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bailey. I guess we'll have to invite you to address that issue in another forum.
What you asked for.
Yeah.
I endorse that view, President. And he
Okay.
really said something. He has really said something that I'm still saying. Then they must show their knowledge, their power, their influence, because they are the qualified ones. It's the tail wagging the dog. This is nonsense.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Bailey. But I'll probably do the vote of thanks to Dr. Hunter. I'm going to ask Kiwan and Marlon Martin to do the honors.
Good evening. Can I have up the good evening to the team? Can I have up the virtual certificate, please? While it comes up, let me go. So
Yeah, you go ahead. I'll put it up in the meantime.
Yes.
So LG, Rosemary, other presidents, Kiwanians, other distinguished guests, good evening as always. It is a pleasure for me to deliver the vote of thanks to Dr. Hunter on behalf of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. We want to say a big thank you for the presentation you have shared with us so eloquently on the current urban trends and development and the importance of proper planning. And listening to the presentation, for me, if we could adopt and learn from the China-Japan sustainable development, their sustainable development and plan as a long-term and not just as an electoral short-term win, which is what has been happening in Jamaica. We can see a lot of changes happening. And interesting to me also is the failure and projects due to corruption and movement of resources. So those are some of the takeaways that jumped out at me. So we want to thank you for the presentation that you have given, and it will remain with us in the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. And interestingly, I heard you also say that you cycle to work. For us in Jamaica, that's a thing that I don't think most of us want to chance with our taxi drivers in Jamaica. But we do look forward to the time when Kingston can be Kingston like any other city. And we're presenting to you, Dr. Hunter, this virtual certificate of appreciation from the Kiwanis Club in recognition of contribution to our club. And we just want to say a pleasant good night to you and thank you for joining us tonight in this presentation. Thank you, Dr. Hunter.
Thank you for having me.
You were staggered. Meeting you staggered.
Yes. Very much, QI and Marlon. We're behind time. So, yes, I'm going to ask Sarge just do a blanket file. QI and Mark, DP Mark, let me mute. Yes, can we have our Sergeant at Arms, please? DP Earl, over to you, sir.
Right, thank you, President Paul, and a very good meeting. And since we want to make it short, I'll just do the light part of the meeting, which is to give some humor. But I like to say that I believe there are only two types of jokes: old jokes and rude jokes. There are no new jokes. And I just want to tell you about Junior, not our PE, but Junior and Delroy, two beggars in London. And they beg in different places, but they know each other. Junior begs just as long as Delroy, but collects only £2 or £3 a day. Delroy brings home a suitcase full of £10 notes, drives a Mercedes, lives in a mortgage-free house, and has a lot of money to spend. So Junior asks Delroy, I work just as long as you and as hard. How is it you bring home suitcase full of £10 notes all the time? He says, look at your sign. What does it say? Show him the sign. I have no work, a wife and 6 kids to support. Delroy says, no wonder you only get £2 or £3. So he says, so Delroy, what does your sign say? He says, it reads, I only need another £10 to move back to Jamaica. I won't give you any more tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Harold.
Good.
Yes, we'll have our notices and announcement, and our Secretary DLG will to do the honors.
Thank you, Pres. Members of the Service Leadership Program Committee are reminded there is a meeting tomorrow evening at my home at 5:30. The chairman for Circle K Key Club and Builders Club are reminded to send their reports to Director Chris. On Saturday, please note, we are going to restart our breakfast feeding program and devotion at the Marie Atkins Shelter. This is Saturday, January 29th, and we want to start at 9 o'clock promptly. On Saturday, February 5th, please note that we are part 2 of our repainting of the Seaview Gardens Police Station that will resume. It's a joint project along with Michael Circle K. In respect to divisional news, please note that there is March 20th is the date for the second quarter divisional council meeting. And the district convention, reminder, is being held in Fredericton, Nova Scotia from August 20th to 22nd. Insofar as interclubs, we have been invited by Presidents of Cyber Connect and South St. Andrew, their trivia night. It's a joint meeting, promises to be interesting. That begins at 7 o'clock. And on the 27th, North St. Andrew have invited us to a meeting. Just as a note, this evening, Kiwanis Club of North Spanish Town, a very young club, has invited us to their meeting tomorrow, where they'll be inducting 11 new members. Their meeting starts at 7 o'clock. Present, those are all the notices and announcements, as well as interclubbing opportunities.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Secretary DLG Willie. I see DP Kevin from our the Diplomats Club, Kiwanis Club of Linstead. DP Kevin.
Yes, thank you so much. The diplomats are indeed in the house. Good evening, fellow Kiwanians. I must say that at first it was a very interesting meeting. Thank you so much for inviting us. The Kiwanis Club of Linstead is pleased to invite you to our guest speaker evening, which will be on Wednesday at 7:30. The topic for the evening is safety, security, and the role of the police. And our guest speaker will be none other than Corporal Francis. Please come out and support us, and we look forward to seeing everyone here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, DP Kevin. Could you share the link with us, please, so we can join as well, because I haven't seen it being circulated.
Most definitely. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much as well. Okay, we move on with the thought of the week, and I'll ask DP Stuart to read the thought of the week before we move to our termination.
Before Stuart says the thought for the week.
Yes.
I'd be remiss if I did not remind the club of the Michael Circle Case Watch program, which is actually a collection and donations towards a water project. They are receiving donations and water projects. I can send something out in the group tomorrow. It's ongoing now, so I'll send out a reminder in the group tomorrow. They're looking forward to our support. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Secretary DLG Willie. Over to you, DP Stuart.
Thank you, President Paul. Just want to make sure that that you guys are hearing me.
Yes, very clear.
Can I get a confirmation?
Yes, we are.
Clearly, thank you. Good. Okay, my first thought. Appreciation is a wonderful thing. It makes what is excellent in others belong to us as well. And that's a quote from Voltaire. And this one, it says, excellence is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, and intelligent execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. And that one comes from Aristotle. Those are my two thoughts for the week, President Paul.
Yes, thank you very much, DP Stuart. Yes, I'm going to ask the participants and members of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston and all others on the platform to raise a toast to Kiwanis International and to Jamaica Land We Love. This meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston is now terminated at 8:50 p.m.
Excellent, President Paul.
Thank you very much, VP Rogers.
Excellent meeting.
I see we didn't have any Fortis admirers to remind the crowd how we join them now. Manning Cup.
Fortunately for us.